and welcome to the First Issue Club podcast. We're your weekly reading club. We're just like Sue Storm. We love a good read. That time around, I said read twice in close proximity. Not the way the intro is supposed to go. It wasn't my smoothest read ever, but it was a read and an intro nonetheless, and it's still a welcome.
You know,
That's the most important part of it. You've been officially welcomed to the club.
and per the intent of the joke, a non-smooth Reed Richards is probably a comic book accurate read,
Oh, that's yeah.
right?
Ooh, you saved me.
You're
Close call. I just got bailed out by Vargas.
you're going for accuracy.
Speaking of Vargas, he's Vargas. I'm Mike D, and we're going to be guiding you on the mothership fic this week. Greg is out. Oh, we missed last week because there was a sickness abound, and this week is no different. There's still a bug going around Greg's house, so sorry we missed an episode. Sorry we were missing Greg today, but Vargas and I will do our best to bring a little bit of that charming gentleman's goofball energy to the podcast, keep his spirit alive in a digital audio sense.
I can sing a song just like Greg always sings.
He's a blessing in disguise. Just sometimes.
Right.
Every once in a while. You get a little reprieve. Happy Marvel's Day.
Yes.
Captain Marvel released as of our recording. It is Thursday at 9:30 right now. I went to a 5:00 showing right after work. I was extremely excited, and I'll keep it spoiler free, but I did want to give some immediate reactions here. I'll start with part of the reason I wanted to give an immediate reaction was I was just seeing a lot of stuff online that was like, the Marvels doesn't perform well its opening weekend. And, as you know, if you're listening to this and you're a comic book fan, the movie hadn't even come out by the time like these articles were being published. And I think we're suffering now in a news cycle from AI and SEO engines basically giving us article titles that people want to see and that people want to click on, and then articles are being written to those to gain attention. And it's sad that I think the algorithm gods are saying, don't go see this movie before the movie's even out, because like people just want to see shit like this not do well. I constantly hear that the first Captain Marvel movie was a flop when I'm talking with other comic book fans about that movie and its perception. That movie made, I think, $1.13 billion. That's not a flop.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a little bit of like, I've been testy all week, kind of building up to seeing this movie, and I really wanted to like it and see something that was awesome, because there's just some. I'm a card carrying member of the Carol Corps, big fan,
Yeah.
and then two, there's just like the whole narrative with like Rotten Tomatoes having to change the way that they allow fan reviews, because people were reviewing things based on the fact that it was a movie they didn't want to see, not on how good or bad a movie was. And Captain Marvel in 2019 was like the main impetus for Rotten Tomatoes changing how these things get voted on by fans. And that's really sad that it was people don't want to see strong women in films, and they want to see those things fail, despite the fact that it's just like, those movies, I think the character, once you take a look at Kelly Sue DeConnick's run, does has a feminist lean to it, of course.
Yeah.
But neither of those movies are like preachy feminist,
Yeah,
manifestos that people make them out to be. I think I would have like enjoyed a feminist, like if the movies were more feminist. I think I would have been more like fuck yeah, but they're not necessarily that. I think a lot of people put a lot of stuff onto those movies for better or worse. In any case, long rant. Again, I've been doing a lot of this week in lead up to say I thought this movie was fantastic. I think it's my I think it aligns next to or is right under Guardians 3 as far as like movies I've enjoyed the experience for post uh, Endgame.
sure.
So it's definitely one of the better Marvel movies that we've seen in recent years. It's very fun. I don't think it takes itself too seriously. It's very breezy. It's probably the shortest Marvel movie I've ever seen.
Yeah,
It doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't feel tedious ever. If I had to knock it for anything, it would be that they pulled two characters out of television
sure.
to make kind of a maybe not necessarily a big screen debut for all of them, but certainly Aman Vellani's uh, first MCU appearance was in this, and really cool to see all those characters on screen. But if you're not somebody who's like steeped in the MCU, there's a little bit of what's going on here and there. But that being said, my wife went and saw it with me, and she hasn't seen, um, you know, Miss Marvel on Disney Plus or uh, WandaVision,
Yeah,
and she had a good time with it still. So if you go into it thinking fun superhero movie and like what kind of you expect like a modern day comic movie to be, that's like quippy at parts, doesn't take itself too seriously, pulls at your heartstrings a little bit when it needs to. Um, I think it was did a super effective job at that. And then I'll say banger post credit scene.
hell yeah.
Absolute banger post credit scene.
That's
So
what we're here for.
try to see it before that gets spoiled for you, because that was a fun moment in the theater.
Cool. Yeah, I saw, not to like harp on it, but I saw a lot of like very disingenuous takes on this movie that's like not barely out yet.
Yeah.
The worst one I saw was a guy who posted a picture of like the seat selection screen on an Fandango or whatever.
Yeah.
Um and the tweet was, nobody cares about this movie. But like the screenshot was from a showing Thursday at 3:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
what are you talking about?
And
Like,
I think there's a problem too with how much this stuff like that is getting posted,
yeah.
that it's probably going to hurt whether people make the decision or not to go see this movie, because people want it to be bad. They're telling you it's bad before they've seen it or before anything's come out about it. And so you're thinking, "Oh, I'm not going to go see this because of all this, you know, negative speak about it."
Yeah.
Um, but like I said, I thought it was great. I've seen a couple other like actual fan reactions to stuff that people, really enjoyed the movie. Um, just I would say take anything with a grain of salt if you've seen it especially from quote unquote fans
Yeah.
prior to Thursday when the movie came out. Like I read
Yeah.
so much bad stuff about this movie before the movie even came out that like was, in my opinion, like completely unfounded.
Well, it's good to hear that that movie is good, because I thought the trailer made it look like a lot of fun, and I'm glad to hear that it is a lot of fun. So
I think fun's the key word. If you go into it just thinking like this is a fun movie based in the world of Marvel. You'll have a blast with it. Me in particular, I absolutely loved it because I'm a Captain Marvel super fan over here.
Yeah,
I went on I did a whole history lesson on Captain Marvel on my Instagram today. I pulled out all my Carol Danvers and Kamala Khan and Monica Rambeau key issues and posted kind of like a year to year. These are the important moments in the character and the family's history.
that's awesome.
It was a lot of fun for me. Self indulgent day. Got to celebrate it.
Sure. Um, I had just a couple of news hits before we dive into what we read.
Yeah.
Um, I know we talked about it just now on the Patreon, but I want to shout out Omnibus again because they have announced on their website they're going to have um, iPhone support coming late this month and then Android support coming in December. So your source for digital comics is coming soon to your pocket.
Good on you, Omnibus.
Yeah. So that's exciting. And the one piece of also Marvel MCU note that I had here is Echo is coming soon to Disney Plus, Marvel's first MA rated show. Looks pretty brutal, but the, I don't know, big news is that she's not going to have any powers.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Yep. She's just going to be the same Maya that we saw in was that Hawkeye where she made
Y-
her appearance.
yes. Yeah.
So
Nothing news happened to her between then
yeah,
and now, I guess.
yeah, she didn't get splashed with like a Ninja Turtles ooze truck or anything, and suddenly gain powers. So
That's a Daredevil ooze truck.
yeah, it's the same truck.
I know, it is the same truck. I just like
So
putting Daredevil's name on it.
yeah, um, I don't know. I think that's kind of cool to see that character get some room to breathe without the, I don't know what the word is, the crutch of superpowers,
Yeah,
you know?
right.
Because I thought she was pretty interesting, and especially having the show apparently um, kind of play off of her relationship with Kingpin, and her figuring out who she wants to be, like what kind of
Yeah.
person she wants to be. Uh, Sounds really interesting.
I
So
absolutely love Vincent D'Onofrio in that role.
yeah,
I think it's one of the best things I've seen him in, and maybe that's heresy if you're a um a movie freak, but I thought he's just unreal in that role, and I'm really excited to see him come back for it. I'm excited to see that there's stuff with Maya as a kid in the trailer, and I'm kind of hoping the series does a lot of like the time jumping throughout the course of the series and not just like here's a 10-minute preamble to give you some back history about Maya. Like I kind of love that dynamic that is becoming like a common trope in these action shows where it's like you're following the past storyline and you're following the present storyline, and then at different points different parts of those stories collide and make for really big moments in the present.
yeah, uh, yeah. I think that show's gonna be very cool, and who knows, maybe she'll get her powers throughout the story. Uh,
Yeah. I
Anyway,
they didn't show Daredevil at all in the preview for it, did they?
there was like a flash of what people are saying is Daredevil,
Okay.
so
He's got to show up, right?
he's probably gonna show up,
Yeah.
for sure.
I
Um,
hope I hope we see a handful of things from. I would love to see Elektra pop back up or something
yeah,
like that um, in this series. So very exciting.
yep,
That trailer's killer.
yep, it's really good. Um, but that's all I had news wise. Do you have anything?
Oh gosh, I've been so infatuated with the Marvels. It's like all I can think of. I'll, why don't I say this because I haven't um because it's not a first issue per se.
Sure.
I'm going to show Andy the cover here on our little Zoom call if I can.
Ooh,
Does it
yeah.
let me? This is Sacred Lamb,
Uh-huh.
Tim Seeley TKO book,
Love
and
Tim Seeley.
I think you would really dig this book in particular because
Okay.
it kind of takes a lot of horror tropes and makes like a fun new inventive story out of it.
Okay.
Um, this isn't exactly how I think the synopsis of the book would translate, but in the spirit of it, it's kind of like what if a bunch of let me rephrase. The government takes a bunch of quote unquote final girls.
Yeah.
uh, and if you're not familiar with like horror terminology, a lot of times in a horror movie, like there's one woman who kind of makes it out and survives the thing, and
Yeah.
then in a sequel, the killer or some alternate version of the killer or a resurrected version of the killer is going to try to get back to that girl that survived. And the US government is taking these women and putting them in a camp because every time the killers come back, they kill a bunch of other people in their wake trying to get to
The
the
final
final girl
girls.
again. And so
That's
they're on this
incredible.
compound and they've all got their like crazy killer and they do like daily meetings where they try to talk their shit out and get over it. And then of course at the end it's a comic book, so there's going to be some sort of comeuppance. All their villains kind of like converge on the camp and find out where they are or resurrected in some way, and then you see all that unfold. It was such a cool graphic novel and easy breezy read. I read it in like an hour or less, so it was a really
That
fun
sounds
book.
incredible.
Yeah, you would really like it. You'll have next time we record in person, you'll have to take this one with you and give it a read.
Hell yeah. I
I've got a
love that.
handful of other, not just a handful. I've got a shit ton of TKO books. They did a half off sale, and they had
Yeah.
already kind of discounted. TKO used to charge like $20 a book for their comics, and I think they repriced everything to like 16. So when they do
Yeah.
their sales, everything's like wildly cheap now. So that Sacred Lamb was $8 a couple days ago.
Hell yeah.
They've got a lot of like prose novels now.
Uh-huh.
And so I picked up 4 of those. I got Blood Like Garnets
Oh, I've heard
by,
that's incredible.
yeah, I keep hearing that's good too. And then I was really excited to pick up Displacement, which is a Cullen Bunn book.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's really fun to get these writers who, I've always traditionally thought of as comic book writers and see what they do in like, a longer form narrative. Brood X, Joshua Dessart, and
Cool.
then Graven Eye, Sloan Leong.
Oh yeah.
So some really pretty books, and then Witches of World War II. Sorry, I don't know how
Yeah.
fun this is for people who are just listening to the audio feed, but I
That looked
mean,
so cool.
yeah, I think this one's going to be awesome. But Paul Cornell, Valeria Berzo, and then Jordie Bellaire,
Yeah.
of course, doing colors on absolutely everything that comes out.
Yeah.
Speaking of, can I just say, side tangent here? Why don't I just wrap this up? Black Mass Rising, got Andy a
Yeah.
copy of that too. It's supposed to be really good.
Hell yeah. That's
But
that Black Mass Rising is like billed as like Dracula 2, right? Like a direct sequel to Dracula.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every time I see that, I think of that Midnight Mass show.
Yes.
The like art on the cover even has like the vibe of that island.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to read that one in particular. Like the graphic design on it is killer.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say, I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I was commenting on a Leo Romero, a post he did the other day of new panel from Birds of Prey that just came out of Wonder Woman, and Jordie Bellaire is coloring that, and he's been coloring it in like, I don't know if it's done digitally or traditionally, but it's like it's made to look like markers, and then when the colors kind of like meet and overlap, they like vibrate and like haze together. It almost looks like you're looking at like markers through like an old CRT,
Oh, sure.
monitor, or like old television, and there's this like hazy vibraty blur between the colors. It is so wild and vibrant looking. I've never seen a comic colored like that. It the first issues of Birds of Prey really took me back, and I almost wondered if it was supposed to look like that or if I got like one that was printed
Yeah.
weird. But
Yeah.
it's consistently looked like that, and I love it. I think it's so cool. And so I commented a little about that on one of his posts, and got a conversation going with a couple people that a lot of people were thinking the same thing. That's just like so visually different. So I think if you're a fan of colorists and the impact they can make on a book, like definitely pick up Birds of Prey. Not only is Leo Romero's art absolutely fantastic, but the the palettes on that book are just incredible. Really pretty, really
I
pretty to
feel
look at.
like I say it every year, but the Eisners should just give the best colorist award to Jordie Bellaire and then say,
We're
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
retire
yeah,
it for
yeah, but and the other, runner up is whoever. Like, I mean,
yeah, it's not fair.
it really isn't, like when you're stacked up against, like, I don't know, just Jordie Bellaire's insane, like top
I don't
tier, number one with a bullet.
I don't know how he does so many comics in a year,
Yeah,
because his name's on like everything.
yeah, I know him and Clayton Cowles, right?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
they do 85% of comic books that are published. It's wild.
And they never do cons really. I don't think I've ever seen Jordie Bellaire at a convention, but colorists don't normally do conventions.
Yeah,
Oh, Jordie Bellaire's a woman. I'm sorry, I said he.
I don't think I knew Jordie's gender, but good on Jordie.
Sorry,
Uh,
Jordie.
Come to Planet and we'll talk to you about colors, I
One of the
guess.
best there is.
For sure. Master of the craft. Um, okay, you want to jump into number ones?
Let's do it.
All right. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
I say you go first. I'm catching up on things.
Okay.
So I've got some books that we either missed, or you or and Greg covered them, and I've finally got around to it, and I have my take now. So I'll do
Okay.
the kind of like recap, and you can do the newbies.
All right. I'll do the new hotness. 1 second. Okay. So this week, and Greg read these same ones, so you're not missing anything with him not being here, other than his presence and personality and all those, like things that you come to the podcast for. But I read Petrol Head out on Image, and I read Punisher out on Marvel. Um,
Hey.
let's talk about Petrol Head first. This is by Rob Williams and Pi Par. It is about a it's post-apocalyptic, and it's about these robots that were built to race cars as like Roman bread and circuses, right? Like placate the masses kind of things.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then sentiments changed because they were polluting the planet too much. So now these robots are like not, well, they're outlawed. They can't come into like the clean air parts of the world. They have to stay in the
Yeah.
dirty air parts. Um, so that's like kind of the elevator pitch, but the story is more about this one like surviving petrol head, which is what they called both the driving robots that spewed the gases and the main character. He is named Petrol Head.
Okay.
Um, where he is, kind of the gruff, like living in a world that he doesn't, want to live in. He can't do the thing that he wants to do. But he gets tangled up with this girl and her dad who have created nanobots that will ostensibly like clean up the atmosphere.
Okay.
But there's also like oppressive government stuff. There's race car stuff. There's family stuff. Kind of all wrapped up in. And it is a pretty beefy book. I think this is probably a 32 pager, priced at $4.99. And $4.99 for an image book, I feel like you're going to get your money worth.
Yeah.
They don't normally increase their prices like this, but I think it was worth it. It's a fun read. The colors are really wild, given that this could have just been like dirty brown because it's robots and post-apocalypse.
Yeah, I pulled up some of the images from it. It's a pretty looking book.
Yeah. So it's
I
very fun, very pretty to look at.
I also really respect when someone can do a really good car comic book because they don't always translate.
Yeah.
Uh, when it's something about like, fast motion and racing, and there's some really dynamic scenes with cars and the way that they're blurring the road and the buildings around them adds a lot of action to the page. But it's oh yeah, that page is great.
Yeah. Um, and to your point too, like the racing scenes, this is supposed to be like pod racing, right? So each car has to have its own like personality, right? And that really comes across. Uh, there's like the crowd favorite. He's got like a speed racer looking kind of thing. And our main character, who's this bum that like nobody really likes, he drives this like kind of a 32 Ford pickup truck wrecker junker looking thing.
Yeah.
Um, so it's just really fun book. Uh, Anytime you can find something like this that's like almost terribly difficult to describe is like why I love reading these number ones for this show.
Yeah.
Because it's like, man, I love this so much, but it's not like I can say, oh, it's like Star Wars, but with robots.
Yeah.
It's just such a unique concept.
It almost see when I'm looking at the pictures of it and the world it's based in. It's it's almost like between Judge Dredd and Mad Max.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
It
that's
looks like
for
this,
sure the vibe. Yeah.
like the cities in Judge Dredd where like they've got the like the mega city like compounds, and then there's like nothing, there's just like a wasteland in between them.
Yeah.
There's like, instead of like the big like apartment stacks, they're like domes.
Yeah. They're like greenhouses,
Yeah.
but with people inside.
Right.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. You would want like an atmosphere, a small atmosphere, and everything like that. It's a good sci-fi concept.
Yeah. So
All right.
lots of good stuff in here. I think this is going to be a really fun one. I'm guessing this is going to turn into like a road trip, kind of thing, given that
Yeah.
it's like about cars. I'm guessing, oh, we have to get to Mega City 2, through the valley of the evil government robots, which I'm all about it. So,
Yeah.
Petrol Head, big thumbs up.
Right on.
And the other book I read by our main man, David Pepos, was Punisher.
Hey.
So this is not Frank Castle. This is a former like Shield hitman. They imply that he's like they call him like the Grim Reaper of Shield or something, where he's like the guy sent out to like tie up Shield's loose ends. Um, and obviously Shield is shut down right now. Like Shield doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So in classic Punisher fashion, somebody that he whatever put a hit out on or something comes back at him after he's retired, blows up the house with his wife and kids in it, and he's on the rampage. Not much more
Yeah.
to explain.
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward Punisher stuff.
Do we get any like context surrounding why they chose this guy? Or like what is it necessarily that makes him a Punisher or the Punisher?
Well, so he is not trying to be the Punisher. He gets called the Punisher because like the body armor suit that he wears just happens to look Punisher-esque.
Okay.
So the news is like,
There's a new Punisher in town.
yeah. So somebody was like, oh, he had a skull on his chest. So the news is like, oh, there's a new Punisher. Is Frank Castle back? Is this a new guy? We don't know. Um, but he as a character is not trying to pick up where Frank left off or anything.
Okay.
Which I think is probably going to be Marvel's way of just resetting the character.
Yeah.
The world is still aware that this will be like a legacy, like Mr. Fantastic is aware that Frank Castle existed and this new guy is evoking that imagery, but he as a character isn't trying to pick up that crusade.
Mm-hmm.
He's still on a very personal mission to figure out who blew up his life literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
And I think that is where David Pepos really shines. Like his writing is the best when he's telling very personal stories. Like he's so good at character development. Um, I'm glad he's not trying to do like a Garth Ennis gritty crime thing.
Yeah.
He's doing a more personal, relatable story.
Yep.
So good stuff. I'm excited about this. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if this Punisher shows up across the Marvel universe.
Right.
In the next year.
Yeah. And this is this character's first appearance.
As far as I'm aware, yeah, Joe
I don't
Garrison is his name.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a pre-existing Shield character. This is just someone they made up, which you're going to see less and less of someone being like, "Oh, here's a fun obscure character we'll pull out of the closet and give them some new history and backstory," because David Pepos and how do you say his name?
Watcher, right?
Dave Watcher, um
Wacchter. Wachter.
Ter, yeah, Wachter. The T's in a new and exciting place.
The T is in a new and exciting
Watu
place.
the Wachter.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right.
they are now that character's creators and get some sort of like, you know, payoff or publishing rights or something when that character is reused or put in something else.
Boy, one would hope.
I know that like there was another book where Colonel Rhodes's niece was set up to basically be Riri Williams,
Oh,
and
sure.
and then is it Brian Michael Bendis who created Riri Williams?
Yeah, when he was writing Iron Man.
Yeah, that they basically scrapped that character that someone else had created and recreated the exact same character for the most part, and made her Ironheart, and now Bendis owns the rights to that character outright, which sucks for the other team who originally had the idea.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes.
Interesting. Yeah, it's Punisher. The other thing I guess of note in this book is we were sort of correct. He does not use like firearms, traditional firearms. He sticks mostly to, well, his kind of signature gun in the book is this like rail gun, like
Yeah.
an energy kind of gun.
Yep.
And he uses little like pew pew laser pistols too. So
Uh-huh.
they're definitely steering away from the
Actual guns and gun violence.
actual gun violence stuff and leaning more into a sci-fi character. So
Yeah. Something he can set to stun.
yeah, exactly. Not that he does. And that's the other thing I want to say too is like he lights a guy on fire in this book, right? So like this is not like
he is a killer still.
Yeah, he's not like going around tasing people, calling himself the Punisher, right?
But he's not glorifying like AR-15s and
yeah, well, he's not fetishizing that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So here we go. The little breakdown calls it John Wick meets the fugitive, which is pretty accurate.
Yeah,
pretty accurate to what it is. So
two good fun things.
Yeah. So pretty great. David Pepos always knocks it out of the park. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah. Dope stuff.
Nice. Is it my turn?
It's your turn, baby. What do you got?
Ooh.
Ooh.
Oh my. I read out on AWA Mark Russell's Rumpus Room.
Hell yeah.
I love Mark Russell.
Yeah.
Everything from, I think, his first comic book, Prez, which wasn't his original character. That's a DC character that was like a teenager who becomes president. And when did that originally come out? The 60s or 70s? And DC was doing kind of like a new wave of stuff. And that was the first Mark Russell thing I ever read. And I loved it. And I've been buying his stuff ever since. Not All Robots is fantastic. Everything he does is great. This book is like particularly fucked up. The Rumpus Room is more or less a room of like people held captive in this rich man's basement. And for whatever reason, I have such a hard time stomaching those like person locked in a basement sort of things.
Yeah.
They just like make me feel sick to my stomach. And I mean, this did too. It was effective. I'll say that.
Yeah. If I'm remembering this book right, it kind of hits you out of nowhere too, right? Like,
yeah.
Like it starts off one way and then takes a hard left turn, right?
Yeah, there's a woman who's looking for her sister who disappeared, and she worked at this company that this guy is like the president of.
Yeah.
And she's like, the company won't give me information, so I tracked you down, came to your house, blah, blah, blah. And he's just like, she's a cop. And he's just like, get rid of her. And they drug her, put her in the Rumpus Room, and they have a one in, one out policy. So they kill this other woman who they drag out, and she more or less becomes like beauty cream or something. Yeah, I think there's something about him like distilling the youth out of people and turning them into like age-defying products.
Yeah, they like crush her down, bones and clothes and all, right? Like into a goo that he like rubs on his face. That's right. It's all coming back to me.
Yeah, the first issue ends with this new woman kind of waking up from being passed out in this room, and then she's freaked out because she doesn't know where she is, right? And so she reaches into her leg holster and pulls out a gun, and everyone in the room that being held prisoner is like, this changes everything. We have a gun in here.
Yeah.
So the next issue is going to deal with them deciding how do we want to, what plan do we make? How do we move forward now that we
Yeah.
have a gun on our hands? Because we could, overpower some people now potentially.
Yeah.
So I thought that was like a really interesting cliffhanger to be like, here's the situation, here's the room. There's no getting out of it, but how does the dynamic change when you throw in one person with one gun who knows how to use it, and it
Right.
just alters the chemistry of the situation entirely. So there's some fun sci-fi stuff there, but I don't know that I'll keep reading it just because the human prisoner torture kind of stuff freaks me out.
I'll say this. I don't know if this is going to be the case, but in my experience, AWA always hits that stuff really hard in like issue 1
Yeah,
and then kind of dials it back.
yeah.
Uh
They hook you with something, and then, well, I
yeah,
mean, anything that's like too much of that is really hard to swallow. Like
sure.
Luana Vecchio's Lovesick
Yeah.
is a really hard book to read because it just like stays on cannibalism and like dom sex party unhealthy relationships,
Yeah.
for like the entirety of the series, and it is like so dark,
Yeah.
and it's just like, God, why am I buying this? But there's part of all of us, I think, that has like a morbid fascination with some of this stuff, and then there's other things where it's like, yeah, that's an interesting concept, and it makes the revenge like oh so sweet when our heroes break free and start kicking ass. So
Yep.
it'll probably be one of those things where it makes the revenge all too sweet. So we'll see. Like I said, I'm a huge Mark Russell fan, so maybe I give this one more of a look in trade form.
Yep.
All right, I finally read Gods.
Hell yeah. I gotta hear the Mike D take.
I loved it. I thought it was so cool.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a newbie comic. It was one of those things where I was like, okay, they're introducing some new things and some new characters. Could this be like a fun jumping on point for some of my friends who are like into reading comics but are don't understand all the lore going on? I was like, Gods has the potential to create some new lore, and I think that it did.
Yeah.
And it's setting up some interesting things and interesting like organizations that, if they're maybe they are pre-existing Marvel things and I'm just not familiar with them as much, but stuff that was new to me. But even still, I think probably not for somebody who is um, more of a comics newbie. But I like the main character a lot. When I saw the preview stuff for Gods, I was like, okay, this guy's like an alternate universe Doctor Strange. He's not that. It's
Yeah, he's
interesting that
like
his character design looks so much like a Doctor Strange, especially on this like cover.
yeah.
And then they kind of pit him alongside or against Doctor Strange for a little bit. And I was like, is that almost on purpose because we're like trying to differentiate these characters a little bit? But
Yeah, he struck me way more as like a John Constantine for Marvel.
oh my gosh, what a fantastic way to put this. He's
Like
yeah,
he's super like
he
casual and
understands all the
sarcastic and
different magic stuff, and
yeah.
I do like the fact that he has a kind of Watson character that's along for the ride,
Yeah.
um, and helps him out with stuff and gets him to like trick people, or is just like more of a data person that isn't necessarily like the brains behind the operation.
Yeah.
So I thought that dynamic was really cool. The character style of his ex-wife, and their dynamic of being like pitted against each other, but also working together to save the world was really interesting. You got to read it, I think, to get their dynamic. That was too complex for me to give like a synopsis of that relationship, but I'm super interested in it. I
Yeah.
don't know where it goes from here. It was very self-contained, I feel like.
Yep.
So you could certainly read God's one and then forget it. But I'll keep pulling on this thread just because it's a Hickman thing, and we'll see where it goes.
I will say also, Gods 2 came out yesterday as of recording,
Yeah,
and it's only $5.99. So
that's good. The
if
first book was $9.99, but it was
yeah,
all comic, no ads, and it was huge.
yeah. So if the price tag of the first issue bummed you out, it might be a little bit easier to swallow. And hasn't it been said that this is only 4 issues?
I think so.
So you got another, $15 versus another 30. So
It
that
makes
at
me wonder, is
least,
this going to roll into the Ultimate stuff at all?
man, I don't know. I don't know
I
what
kind of
Hickman's doing with it.
I kind of thought it would, but it's soundly based in 616 as far as I can tell, unless it's going to be a surprise that this is in the Ultimate universe.
That would be surprising and confusing.
Mm-hmm.
I think if that was the reveal.
Or maybe this character is someone who ends up
Tr-
hopping between.
yeah, traverses whatever.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yep. Could be, could be. So yeah, I dug it. It was a lot.
Yeah.
It was like reading 4 comics in a row. I mean, it was a lot of comic books. So
But it
uh,
it didn't feel like a
it was fun to
slog.
read. No, it didn't
Yeah.
feel like a slog. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. Which honestly, like, given all the hype and what they said they're trying to do with this
Mm-hmm.
series, I was surprised how entertaining and fun it was.
A lot of the book they use this I, kind of trope of like trading up things
Yeah.
where our main character finds a penny on the ground, but it turns out that penny's from another universe and he trades it to a collector for a thing who then he trades to another person who needs that thing, and then he slowly finds more and more people and the things that he needs.
Yeah,
And
he goes
I
on a
don't
Zelda trading quest.
Yeah, exactly right. And I don't know um if he's got like a superpower that is more or less like being able to luck into these things or see the threads that connect things to make something happen, because the jumps that it takes are too far fetched to be like not planned.
That was like, I interpreted him because he works for, what is it? She works for the powers that be, and he works for like all of creation or whatever. They're like two organizations that have like, names like that.
Yeah,
And he is like a laissez-faire, oh, it's all gonna work out. It's all cool. And
yeah,
that's like his power, is to like, oh, I see this penny. This is probably here for a reason. I'll
yeah,
like pick it up. And then the flip side of that coin is his wife, who's like science girl. And she's like, you got to dig down into everything.
yeah.
And they're like butting heads about those two like sides of reality.
Yep. It's like everything works out for him except that.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Except his relationship.
Except his
Yeah.
wife. Yeah,
Hmm.
for sure. Yeah,
So
good
that was
stuff.
cool. I love the conversation of like her being mortal and him
Yeah.
essentially being immortal as a role with in the role he plays, and she's like, give it up or I'm taking this job. And once I
Yeah.
take this job, we can't be together. That dynamic was really interesting. They set up this idea of, oh, it was something like Centurions or something, where there's like 100 people who hold these positions of power at this like organization.
Yeah.
And I think they essentially become immortals or are endowed with some sort of like all knowing library pass.
Yeah. If they're not immortal, they can science their way to immortality.
Yeah, exactly right. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's some really fun things going on here.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Good
then my
stuff.
my last book was Operation Sunshine, which was a DC comic. It's
No, Dark Horse.
sorry, Dark Horse. Blah. Dark
Yeah.
Horse.
Okay.
David Rubens does the art on it, and then Henry Zabrowski and Marcus Parks were, I think, co-wrote it.
Yep.
But have you read this?
No, I missed it, which sucks because I'm a huge fan of Last Podcast on the Left.
Oh, I didn't put that together.
Yeah, Henry and Marcus are the hosts of Last Podcast, and they did Soul Plumber out on DC.
Oh,
If you
Soul Plumber
remember
was
that,
cool. Yeah.
yeah,
So this is like a vampire story, and it follows these characters who are like quote unquote bugs, who are the people the vampires turn.
uh huh,
And then there's OVs that they call, I think they just call like OVs, that are original vampires.
sure,
And I thought that was an interesting maybe that's existing vampire lore that I'm not familiar with, but I thought it was an interesting concept that, like, in traditional stuff I've seen, you bite a guy and they survive, they
yeah,
become a vampire just like you.
right,
But here, those kind of like long-standing vampiric creatures like stay kind of the OG vampires, and then
yeah,
everyone else is like a quote unquote bug is the slang term for it, and then the vampires, in addition to killing people to survive, also kind of hunt these bugs to like tie up weird loose ends in their like lineage and stuff.
okay, sure,
And so one of the bugs is like a guy at like a tech startup, and he just turned like a month ago, but he's trying to like figure out how he can try to keep his job. And he made this app that like helps people facilitate and communicate about like where to find and get blood and all this stuff. And
sounds very Last Podcast, but like it
yeah,
tracks.
I thought it was really interesting. There's like, a decent amount of like infrastructure and bureaucracy stuff with like all the relationships between all the characters and different like levels of vampire.
Yeah,
And then um, there's a decent amount of action and fighting and killing. That's makes the book like really charming. By the end of it, you kind of have like a weird hodgepodge team of people that like just are completely different personality types and different people. And some have been alive for 350 years, other people just turned into vampires, and then some people there's a guy who's like thousands of years old, and they just bounce off of each other in a really interesting way. So I really like the book. I didn't know that these were um, famous podcasters, but David Rubin is an artist that I absolutely love. Did that really cool Kickstarter book, Cosmic Detective, with
yeah,
Matt Kent and Jeff Lemire. Has a really unique style that like screams at you when you walk past it in a comic shop. So
yeah,
I'll be picking this one up for sure.
yeah. Really disappointed I missed that.
Yeah, you got to read it.
Yeah.
I've got a handful of things to loan you. Sounds like. I'll tell you guys, Vargas is someone you can trust with your stuff. Anytime I've let you borrow anything, it's come back to me the next week.
Well, I
Can't say the same about a lot of my other friends, Andy.
I honor your reading method when I borrow your floppies at least.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I put it
Yeah,
on the
balance it
cardboard.
on the board and barely touch the pages.
That's right.
I am so anal about that stuff.
I know.
And that's the reason I do so well at CGC, my people.
That's true. That's true.
We sent in the old Budget Kings comics. Mike Russo, who used to host the podcast with us, is looking to sell a lot of his comics.
Oh, okay.
And he's got a handful of key books. So I helped him submit a lot of stuff. And today they were in Missouri. We live in Kansas City, Missouri. So I'm thinking they'll arrive tomorrow. So we might record a little opening video for the Patreon.
Hell yeah.
And post that this weekend if we can meet up and make that happen. But his collection was, we were packing stuff for it, and I was like, it was kind of brutal seeing these books that were like $300 to $500 comics that just had a tick or a ding in them, and I'm
Yeah.
like, man, all of these like best case scenario or 9.6s, and you're just like leaving so much potential value on the table if you're trying to like, if his goal is to sell them, you know what I mean?
Right, right.
And so much of that I think comes down to like the shop that he was buying them from at the time, which was Clint's,
Yeah.
which I think is where you still get your comics.
Yeah.
And hopefully they've gotten better. But you know, we talked the other day about how there was like another leak in their roof, and like that's something that used to happen all the time there. And then the people at the counter like clobber your comics as they're like checking you out and have like clammy hands, and your books are all smeared.
Yeah.
And it's just a bummer to buy your comics from a shop that like doesn't understand collecting.
Right.
Um, which, while we're readers and love the medium and obviously read shit tons of comics, like I get it, it's about reading comics and stuff, but it's a nice side effect of it is that some of this stuff holds their value, and then
Yeah.
when you know every single comic you buy comes out like with a ding or a dent or a fingerprint on the cover, that just like is hard to stomach after a while.
Yeah. It's it's fine enough when like 95% of your books just end up as like 50
Nothing.
cent, but
Yeah.
the other 5% that are actually worth something, you want to keep nice
Yep.
for sure.
And yeah, my reading time probably is much slower than a lot of people, because I treat every book as if it were like the next Something is Killing the Children. I'm like
Yeah.
so
Well,
careful with everything.
that's why you're Mike 9.8 to Stacy.
Yeah. Great track record on CGC.
Uh, well, speaking of Patreon, we have a Patreon,
Yep.
patreon.com/first issue club. Check us out there. In addition to these weekly vids, we do weekly Patreon, uh, if not more. We post a bunch of stuff there, written reviews and lists and all kinds of fun stuff. We try and keep it cheap. It's what, $3.99 a month?
Yeah. Price of what a comic book used to be, not adjusted for inflation.
That's right. Eventually, we're gonna.
We're like Costco over here. We're still selling the $2.99 hot dog or whatever it is.
Yeah, eventually we're gonna go to $9.99. But it's all ads.
Yeah.
So no, we won't do that. So when we do offer $1,
Just a taste
trial.
tier. Yeah.
Yeah. So I release one video a month for that, so you can see what you're getting. Uh, and the other thing to remember is we release all the regular episodes on YouTube now. So if you
Yep.
want to see our shiny happy faces, head over to YouTube and check us out.
One last thing I'll add is that I've got LA Comic Con that I'm heading to in less than a month.
Ooh.
So if there's anything you want to know or hear or see about any of the people at LA Comic Con, or if you're an OG fan and have something like an exclusive you see, maybe there's a chance I can grab something for you that's at LA, and hopefully I can get it back on a plane okay, or ship it back to myself and have stuff stay in okay condition. And anymore, it's like you can get almost any con exclusive online,
Yeah.
a lot of the times for less than you paid for it at a convention, which sucks.
Hey, but a lot of the times for a lot more than what you pay at the convention.
That's true. Yeah,
So,
you never know what it's going to be. You're
Yeah.
going to leave the convention and it's either going to be half of what it used to be, or it's going to double immediately.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll be there, and then I'll be there with Budget King, so I'll have another podcaster there to kind of do some takes
Cool.
with me, and then the three of us, I think, you, me, and Greg are gonna hopefully try to go to C2E2 next year if we can make it happen. So
yeah,
we'll see about that, but keep your keep your ears peeled for more details. I don't think we're going to do a panel or anything at C2E2. Maybe we should try to.
Sure. Why not?
I don't know. I always do. Every year I do a podcast meetup there, and it's a lot of fun. You just I just trade cards with people, and we just BS about each other's podcasts and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
Totally.
Really fun con if you've never been.
I haven't, so.
Yeah, it's great. It's a blast. You'll absolutely love it.
Dope. Well, that does it for this episode. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next week. Follow us on social medias. Smash that like button. What am I forgetting? Nothing?
That's it.
Bye.
Bye.